The glass trembled in my grandson's hand as he crushed something white into the orange juice. My heart stopped. Through the crack in the kitchen door, I watched him stir it with his finger, glancing toward the bedroom where his pregnant wife slept. This was my boy, the child I'd raised after his mother died, the man I'd watched become a husband. And now, here he was, becoming a monster. I'd suspected something was wrong for weeks. The way she flinched. The exhaustion in her eyes. The way she moved through their home like a ghost. But this was beyond my worst nightmares. I had seconds to decide, burst through that door or call the police first. Either way, my family was about to shatter. Welcome to Soul and Soul Stories. Today we are going on an intense emotional stories that may trigger some of you. If you know you can't stand violence or abuse, kindly stop watching. This is a true life story, and I'll appreciate it if you tell me where you are watching from. Now, let's get into it. I should start from the beginning, because nothing about this makes sense unless you understand who my grandson used to be. 28 years ago, I held him for the first time in a sterile hospital room, just hours after his mother, my daughter, took her last breath. Complications during childbirth, they said. One life for another, like some cruel cosmic exchange. My son-in-law couldn't even look at the baby. He left when the boy was 3 months old, and I never heard from him again. So I raised him. Just me, a widow with arthritis in both knees and a pension that barely covered groceries. But Lord, that boy was worth every struggle. He was good. Not perfect, no child is, but genuinely deeply good. The kind of kid who cried when he accidentally stepped on a beetle. Who spent his allowance on flowers for me every Mother's Day. Who worked 2 jobs through college so he wouldn't burden me with student loans. Grandma, he'd say, flopping onto my worn couch after 12-hour shifts, when I get married, I'm gonna treat my wife like a queen. Like you deserve to be treated. My husband had been a hard man. Not abusive, but cold. Distant. I knew my grandson had seen how that hollowed me out over the years. You do that, baby, I'd tell him, smoothing his hair like I did when he was small. You be the man your grandfather couldn't be. And when he met Leah during his final year of university, I thought my prayers had been answered. She was studying to be a teacher, all soft smiles and genuine warmth. She came from a good family, had dreams of her own, but loved my grandson with an intensity that honestly surprised me. Most girls his age were playing games, keeping their options open. Not Leah. When she looked at him, it was like he hung the moon. They dated for 3 years before he proposed. Saved up for a year to buy her a modest ring that she cried over like it was the Hope Diamond. Grandma, I'm gonna do this right, he told me the night before the wedding, his eyes shining with something I hadn't seen since he was a child, pure, uncomplicated joy. I waited for her. I'm going in clean, with nothing to compare her to, no baggage. Just us. He was a virgin. In this day and age, 25 years old, and he'd waited. Not because he was particularly religious. We went to church on holidays, that was about it, but because he wanted it to mean something. The wedding was small but beautiful. Leah wore her mother's altered dress. My grandson cried during the vows. I cried watching him cry. For their honeymoon, I gave them a week at a cabin I'd rented in the mountains. It was all I could afford, but they acted like I'd gifted them a trip to Paris. When they came back, my grandson was different. Happier, yes, but there was something else. An electricity. A new confidence. He showed up at my house 3 days after they returned, practically bouncing through the door. Grandma, I gotta tell you something. He was grinning like a fool, that boyish excitement making him look 17 again. Oh Lord, what is it? It was amazing. He laughed, running his hand through his hair. I mean, I knew it would be special with her, but Grandma, I didn't know it could be like that. I feel like I finally understand something everyone else knew all along. I smiled, relief flooding through me. I'm happy for you, baby. That's how it should be with someone you love. Is it normal to want to, all the time now? He was blushing, but still grinning. Like, I can't stop thinking about her. About us. That's called being a newlywed, I laughed. Just make sure you're thinking about her as a whole person, not just. Oh, of course, he interrupted. I love her, Grandma. I also love that. With her. It's like my whole world has colors I couldn't see before. He left that day on cloud 9, and I felt such peace. Such certainty that I'd raised him right. I should have known it wouldn't last. The first crack appeared about 2 months after the wedding. I'd stopped by their apartment with some of my homemade lasagna. They were both working full-time, and I knew they'd appreciate a home-cooked meal. Leah answered the door, and something was off. She still smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Is everything all right, sweetheart? Of course. Too bright. Too quick. We're great. Just adjusting to married life, you know. My grandson appeared behind her, and he was different too. Not glowing anymore. There was a hardness around his eyes I'd never seen before. Hey, Grandma. He kissed my cheek, but it felt perfunctory. Thanks for the food. How are things at work? Fine. He was already walking back to the living room, to the TV that was blaring some sports game. Leah gave me an apologetic look. He's been tired lately. Long hours. But it wasn't tiredness. I knew my grandson's tired. This was something else. Over the next few months, I watched him transform. He started dressing differently, designer brands we couldn't afford, gold chains, expensive cologne that made my eyes water. He stopped calling me except when he needed something. When I invited them to dinner, he'd show up late or not at all, sending Leah alone with increasingly elaborate excuses. Where does he go? I asked her one evening after he'd canceled on Sunday dinner for the 3rd week in a row. She stared at her plate. Out with the guys from work. They've really taken him under their wing. The way she said it, like she was trying to convince herself it was a good thing, made my stomach turn. I'd met these guys once at a work barbecue Leah had dragged me to. They were in their 30s and early 40s, loud and crude, married men who talked about their wives like they were burdens. Like they were objects. One of them, I think his name was Derek, had actually said, right in front of everyone, the trick is to train them early. Let them know who's boss. The others had left. My grandson had been standing right there. He'd looked uncomfortable then, even laughed nervously and said, "That's not really." "Oh, you're still in the honeymoon phase," another one interrupted, slapping his back. "Give it a year. You'll see." Should have said something then. Should have pulled my grandson aside and reminded him of who he was, who he'd wanted to be. But I didn't. I thought his goodness was too deep to be shaken by a few crude coworkers. I was wrong. 6 months after the wedding, Leah showed up at my door at 11 o'clock on a Tuesday night. She'd been crying. Her eyes were puffy and red, and she was wearing pajamas under her coat. "Sweetheart, what happened? Can I stay here tonight?" Her voice cracked. "Please." I pulled her inside immediately. "Of course. Always. What's going on?" She broke down on my couch, sobbing so hard she couldn't catch her breath. I held her like I'd held my grandson when he was small and had nightmares, and I felt rage building in my chest. "Did he hurt you?" I asked quietly, already knowing the answer would destroy me either way. Not like that," she managed between sobs. "He just... Grandma, I don't know who he is anymore. He's angry all the time. He demands. He wants." She couldn't finish. "Take your time, baby." "He wants sex constantly," she finally whispered, shame coloring her voice. "Every single day, sometimes multiple times. And if I'm tired or not in the mood, he gets angry. He says I'm his wife, like that means I owe him. He started calling me names when I say no. Says I'm frigid. Says I trapped him. I felt like I'd been punched. Trapped him? He thinks because he waited, because he was a virgin, that I somehow... I don't know, tricked him into marriage? Like now that he knows what he was missing, he's angry about all the years he waited." She laughed bitterly. "His friends tell him he's a simp for being nice to me, for bringing me flowers or doing the dishes. They say I have him whipped. And he listens to them? He didn't at first. But they kept at it, and I think part of him started to believe them. Started to think that respecting me, treating me like a partner, made him weak." She told me everything that night. How he'd started tracking her ovulation cycle, initiating sex during her fertile windows and getting angry when she didn't immediately get pregnant. How he criticized her appearance, saying she needed to keep herself up now that they were married. How he'd thrown a plate at the wall last week because dinner wasn't ready when he got home. I love him, she sobbed. I love who he was. But Grandma, I'm scared of who he's becoming. You're going to stay here tonight, I told her firmly. And tomorrow, we're going to figure this out. He needs help. This isn't my grandson. But even as I said it, I wondered, was this transformation always inside him? Had his goodness been a facade, easily stripped away by the wrong influences? Or had those men genuinely corrupted someone who'd been decent? I didn't know which possibility was worse. He showed up at my door at 7 the next morning, looking panicked. Where's Leah? Is she here? She is. And she's staying here until you get your act together. Something flickered across his face, anger, maybe, or shame. Grandma, this is between me and my wife. Your wife who showed up here in tears. That wife. She's being dramatic. We had a fight. Couples fight. Couples fight about bills and whose turn it is to do dishes, I snapped. They don't fight because one person thinks they own the other's body. His jaw clenched. She told you that? That's not what's happening. I have needs, okay? And she knew that when she married me. She knew what marriage meant. Marriage means partnership, respect, love, and sex, he shot back. Or did you forget that part? I waited 25 years. 25. All through high school and college while everyone else was having fun, experiencing life. I waited because I thought it was right, because I thought it would be special with the right person. And it was, but now she acts like I'm some kind of monster for wanting it with my own wife. I stared at the stranger wearing my grandson's face. Those men at your work, I said quietly. They're poisoning you. He laughed, harsh and bitter. Those men are the only ones telling me the truth. They're the only ones who understand what it's like to be married to a woman who doesn't appreciate what she has. They're teaching you to be cruel. They're teaching me to be a man instead of a doormat. Leah appeared in the hallway behind me, wrapped in my bathrobe. I'll come home, she said quietly. But things have to change. His expression softened instantly. Baby, yes. We'll talk. We'll figure it out. I promise. She went home with him that day. I begged her not to, but she was determined to save her marriage. I should have stopped her. For the next few months, I got carefully curated updates. Phone calls where Leah assured me everything was better. Sunday dinners where they both smiled and held hands across the table. But I could see the truth in Leah's eyes. She was fading. Then, 8 months after the wedding, she called with news. Grandma, I'm pregnant. I should have been overjoyed. Instead, dread settled in my stomach like a stone. How do you feel about that, sweetheart? A pause. Honestly, I'm terrified. Does he know? Not yet. I'm only 6 weeks along. I wanted to tell you first because I need to know something. Her voice wavered. Do you think people can change back? If someone becomes cruel, can they remember how to be kind? I don't know, I admitted. But a baby won't fix what's broken. I know. But maybe becoming a father will remind him of who he wanted to be. It was the hope in her voice that broke my heart. My grandson's reaction to the pregnancy was complicated. He was excited, yes, but it was a possessive kind of excitement. He immediately started talking about how he hoped it was a boy, someone to carry on his name. He became even more controlling, dictating what Leah could eat, monitoring her activities, insisting she quit her teaching job to focus on being a mother. He says we can't afford childcare, Leah told me over coffee, her hand resting on her barely there bump. And he's right, we can't. But Grandma, I love teaching. It's the only thing that still feels like mine. What about what you want? She smiled sadly. I'm not sure that matters anymore. The pregnancy was difficult. Leah suffered from severe morning sickness, exhaustion, and anxiety. Her doctor recommended rest and stress reduction. My grandson saw it as an inconvenience. She's pregnant, not dying, he complained to me one evening when I'd come over with soup. My mom did this and still took care of everything. Why does Leah act like she's on her deathbed? Your mother died from complications during childbirth, I reminded him coldly. Maybe show your wife some compassion. He had the grace to look ashamed, but it didn't last. The worst part was the sex. Even pregnant, exhausted, sometimes in pain, he still demanded it constantly. I know this because Leah told me, weeping over the phone at midnight one night after he'd stormed out of their apartment because she'd refused him. I'm 7 months pregnant, she sobbed. I can barely sleep. Everything hurts. And he acts like I'm withholding something from him on purpose. Like I'm punishing him. Where is he now? Out with Derek and those guys. They go to bars, I think. Sometimes strip clubs. They tell him he's justified. That pregnant wives get boring and men need outlets. I wanted to drive over there and shake some sense into him. This boy I'd raised, this man I'd been so proud of, was turning into everything I'd feared. But it got worse. At 8 months pregnant, Leah went into early labor. The baby, a little girl, was born premature. She lived for 3 days in the NICU before her tiny body gave out. The doctor said it was likely due to stress during the pregnancy. Maternal stress, affecting fetal development. I held Leah while she screamed. Held her while she shattered into pieces so small I didn't know if they could ever be put back together. My grandson was stone-faced at the funeral. He cried, yes, but there was anger in it. Like he blamed the world, blamed fate, blamed everyone but himself. After the funeral at my house, Derek pulled him aside. I heard them through the open window. Look, man, this is rough. But you're young. You can have other kids. She won't even look at me, my grandson said, his voice hollow. She blames me. Does she say that? She doesn't have to. I can see it. Well, even if that's true, you guys need to move forward. Reconnect, you know. There was a pause. Then my grandson said, she won't let me touch her. It's been 3 weeks. She just had a baby, man. And she lost it. I know that's sad, but life goes on. I need my wife back. I felt sick listening to this. His daughter, his asterisk daughter, had been dead for less than a month, and he was complaining about sex. Give her time, Derek said. But not too much. Women can spiral. You need to remind her she's still a wife. That conversation should have been my warning. Postpartum depression combined with grief nearly killed Leah. She moved through the world like a ghost, barely eating, barely sleeping. The doctors prescribed antidepressants and therapy. I visited every day, bringing food she wouldn't eat and sitting beside her while she stared at nothing. My grandson, meanwhile, grew increasingly resentful. I lost my daughter too, he told me one evening, anger vibrating through his words. But I still go to work. I still function. She just lays in bed all day feeling sorry for herself. She grew that baby in her body, I said, struggling to keep my voice even. She felt her die. Don't you dare minimize what she's going through. I'm not minimizing it. I'm just saying she's still my wife. We still have a relationship. But she acts like I don't exist. Like my needs don't matter. Your needs. I stared at him. Your daughter just died. And I'm dealing with it. But I'm also lonely, Grandma. My wife won't talk to me, won't touch me, barely acknowledges me. I'm grieving too, but I'm a man. I have needs. There it was again. Needs. Like they trumped everything else, grief, trauma, basic human decency. If you touch her before she's ready. I'm not a rapist, he snapped. Jesus, Grandma. I'm not a monster. I'm just frustrated. But he was becoming a monster. Maybe not the kind he thought, but a monster nonetheless. It was Derek who suggested the pills. I know this because I found the text messages later after everything happened. My grandson had been complaining about Leah's continued disinterest in sex. For months after losing the baby, she was doing better, going to therapy, starting to eat again, even smiling occasionally. But she wasn't interested in intimacy. Doc says it's normal, my grandson texted Derek. Grief, depression, hormones, whatever. But man, I'm losing my mind. Derek's response. There are ways to make things easier. Like what? Remember Jake from the warehouse? He said his wife got like that after their second kid. Refused him for months. He slipped her something to relax her. Worked like a charm. You mean like drugs? Just something to lower inhibitions. Make her more agreeable. It's not like you're drugging a stranger, man. She's your wife. There was a long pause in the messages. Then my grandson wrote, "Ick man. That feels wrong. Is it wrong to want your wife? To want your marriage to be normal? Look, she's depressed. She's not thinking clearly. You're just helping her get past her mental block. Once you guys reconnect, she'll thank you." Another pause. Where would I even get something like that? I can hook you up. Nothing crazy. Just something to make her drowsy and relaxed. Take the edge off her anxiety. I'll think about it. But he didn't just think about it. I'd started coming by their apartment more often. Something in my gut was screaming that Leah wasn't safe, though I couldn't put my finger on why. She seemed better on the surface. She'd returned to substitute teaching. She smiled more. But there was something vacant behind her eyes, especially when she looked at my grandson. How are things? I'd ask her during my visits. Fine, she'd say automatically. We're working on things. But I noticed bruises on her wrists sometimes. Noticed how she'd flinch when he touched her. Noticed the way she seemed to dissociate, staring at nothing while the world moved around her. "Leah," I said one afternoon while my grandson was at work. "If something's wrong, if he's hurting you, you can tell me." "He doesn't hit me," she said quietly. "If that's what you're asking. There are other ways to hurt someone." She met my eyes then, and the pain in them was staggering. "I don't want to talk about it, Grandma. I'm handling it. By dissociating? By disappearing inside yourself. By surviving." That word, surviving, not living, haunted me for days. Then came the night that changed everything. My grandson had asked me to come by their apartment to drop off some old photo albums I'd been meaning to give Leah. Pictures of happier times of the grandson I used to know. I arrived around 9 p.m., later than intended because my arthritis had been acting up. I used the spare key they'd given me. They'd told me to just let myself in if they didn't hear the bell. The apartment was quiet. Dark except for the light in the kitchen. I heard water running. Cabinets opening and closing. "Hello." I called out. "It's just me." No answer. Something made me move quietly toward the kitchen. Some instinct, some terrible knowing. Through the crack in the partially open door, I saw him. My grandson. Standing at the counter. A glass of orange juice in front of him. And in his hand, a small white pill crushed to powder on a spoon. I watched him tap the powder into the juice. Watched him stir it with his finger, glancing nervously toward the bedroom. Time stopped. This was real. This was happening. My grandson, my baby, the boy I'd raised to be kind and good, was drugging his wife. I should have burst through the door. Should have screamed. Should have knocked the glass from his hands. But I was frozen, my mind unable to process what I was seeing. He picked up the glass, took a breath like he was steeling himself, and started toward the bedroom. That broke the spell. I shoved the kitchen door open hard enough to slam it against the wall. He spun around, the glass sloshing in his hand. His face went from shock to pale terror in seconds. "Grandma, this isn't." "Put the glass down." "Let me explain." "Put the glass down." He set it on the counter with shaking hands. "It's not what you think." "Really? Because it looks like you're about to drug your wife." "I'm not. It's just something to help her relax. She's been so stressed, and I thought." "You thought you'd drug her." I felt like I was in a nightmare. "You thought you'd put something in her drink without her knowledge and what? Force yourself on her." "I'm not forcing anything. I'm just making it easier for both of us. She wants to want me. She's just too in her head, and this is rape." The word hung in the air between us. "What you were about to do is rape." He flinched like I'd slapped him. "Don't call it that. She's my wife." "That makes it worse, not better." Leah appeared in the doorway, wrapped in a robe, looking confused and sleepy. "What's going on? Why are you yelling?" I looked at her, this beautiful, broken young woman who'd trusted the wrong man. Who'd loved someone who'd transformed into someone unrecognizable. "Ask him," I said quietly. "Ask your husband what's in that glass of orange juice." She looked at the glass. At him. Understanding dawned slowly, like a terrible sunrise. "Baby, I can explain," he started. She backed away from him, hand over her mouth. "You were going to, oh my God. Oh my God. It's not like that. I would never hurt you. I love you. I just needed." Needed? Her voice rose to a shriek. "You needed to drug me?" "I needed my wife back," he shouted. "I needed the woman who used to want me, who used to love me. But instead, I got the shell of a person who flinches when I touch her and looks at me like I'm a monster." "Because you're a monster," she screamed. "You killed our baby with your selfishness and your demands and your constant pressure, and now you were going to." She couldn't finish. She was hyperventilating, backing toward the door. My grandson looked between us, something crumbling in his expression. "I'm not a monster," Derek said. "The guys said this was normal. That married men sometimes have to." "Derek is a predator," I said coldly. "And he turned you into one too." "I'm not a predator. I'm just a man who wants his wife." "Then you should have been a husband worth wanting." The words hit him like a physical blow. He stood there, in the kitchen where he'd been preparing to commit an unthinkable act, and I saw the moment he realized what he'd become. But realization doesn't equal redemption. I called the police. My grandson didn't try to stop me. He just stood there, tears streaming down his face, repeating, "I'm not a monster," like a mantra. Leah had grabbed her phone and locked herself in the bathroom. I could hear her sobbing through the door, calling her mother. The police arrived within 10 minutes. I showed them the glass, explained what I'd seen. My grandson didn't deny it. I wasn't going to hurt her, he kept saying. I just wanted things to be normal again. They arrested him anyway. Sexual assault in the 3rd degree, they called it. Intent to commit sexual assault. Possession of controlled substances with intent to use in the commission of a crime. Derek was arrested too, later that week. Turned out he'd been providing pills to multiple men at their workplace, encouraging them to use them on their wives. When the police dug deeper, they found a whole network of men, not a formal group, just a collection of predators validating each other's worst instincts. 3 of them were convicted. 4 more took plea deals. The workplace was sued. Lives exploded like shrapnel, damaging everyone in the blast radius. My grandson's trial was 6 months later. Leah divorced him before then. She moved back in with her parents and slowly, painfully, started rebuilding herself. I visited my grandson in jail once, before the trial. I needed to understand how we'd gotten here. How my baby had become this. He was thinner, paler, with dark circles under eyes that wouldn't meet mine. "I'm sorry," he said immediately. "Grandma, I'm so sorry." "Sorry you did it? Or sorry you got caught?" "Both." "Neither." "I don't know." He put his head in his hands. "I don't know who I am anymore. You're someone who is going to drug and rape his wife." He flinched. "Don't say it like that. That's what it is. That's what you were going to do." "I loved her," he whispered. "I still love her." "That's not love. Love doesn't look like that." "Then what happened to me?" He looked up, and there was genuine confusion in his eyes. "I used to be good. I used to be the kind of man who treated women with respect." "When did that change?" "When you started listening to the wrong people. When you decided that your wants were more important than her humanity." "They made it sound so reasonable," he said quietly. "Derek and the others. They made it sound like I was the victim. Like Leah was withholding something that was rightfully mine. And I was so angry, Grandma. So angry and lonely and frustrated. And they kept saying that was normal, that all men felt that way, that there were ways to fix it. And you believed them. I wanted to believe them. Because the alternative was admitting that I was the problem. That I destroyed my marriage and my wife and my daughter through my own selfishness." His voice cracked. "It was easier to be the victim. You destroyed a good woman," I said. "A woman who loved you completely." "And for what? For sex? For validation from men you barely knew." "I don't know." He was crying now, ugly sobs that shook his whole body. "I don't know who I became. I look back at the past year and it's like watching a stranger. Someone who looked like me but wasn't me. But it was you," I said firmly. "You made those choices. You listened to those men. You crushed those pills. That was all you. I know. He wiped his face. I know. And I have to live with that. But Grandma, I need you to know, the boy you raised, he's still in here somewhere. He's screaming at what I became. He's disgusted and ashamed and... That boy is dead, I said quietly. You killed him. Maybe not on purpose, maybe slowly, but you killed him. He stared at me, devastated. Can he come back? He whispered. Can I? Is there any way to be that person again? I don't know. Maybe. But it'll take years of work, and even then, you'll never be who you were. That innocence, that goodness? It's gone. I deserve that. Yes, I agreed. You do. We sat in silence for a moment. Then he said, Will you still visit me? After the trial, when they send me away. I'd been asking myself that question for months. I don't know, I admitted. Part of me says you're still my grandson. That I raised you and I can't abandon you. But part of me looks at you and sees a stranger. Sees a man who is willing to violate someone I love. I understand. Do you? Do you really understand what you've done? Not just to Leah, but to yourself? To me? You broke my heart. You took every good thing I thought I'd built and showed me it was made of sand. I'm sorry, he said again, helplessly. Sorry isn't enough. Sorry doesn't undo what happened. Sorry doesn't give Leah back her sense of safety or her dead daughter or the year of her life she spent being degraded by someone who promised to cherish her. I know. I'm not sure you do. The trial was brutal. Leah had to testify about the months of coercion, the constant pressure, the emotional abuse. She had to describe, in excruciating detail, how she'd felt used and violated even before the drugging incident. He made me feel like an object, she said on the stand, her voice steady despite the tears. Like my only value was my body and what it could provide him. When I lost our daughter, he gave me 2 weeks to grieve before he started complaining that I wasn't available to him sexually. 2 weeks. My grandson's lawyer tried to paint it as a misunderstanding between spouses. Tried to suggest that Leah was exaggerating, that the pill was just an anti-anxiety medication meant to help her relax. But the prosecution had Derek's text messages, had testimonies from other women whose husbands had been part of this network, had the pills themselves, which weren't anti-anxiety medication at all, but a combination of sedatives and muscle relaxants. Your client was preparing to incapacitate his wife so he could use her body without her conscious consent, the prosecutor said during closing arguments. That's not a misunderstanding. That's not a marital dispute. That's a premeditated sexual assault. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. The judge sentenced him to 6 years in prison with mandatory sex offender treatment. You betrayed the most fundamental trust, the judge said. You took someone who loved you and turned them into a victim. You don't get to blame your friends or your upbringing or your frustration. You made these choices. You live with the consequences. I watched them take him away in handcuffs. He looked back at me once, his eyes pleading. I didn't wave, didn't nod, just watched. That was 8 months ago. Leah is doing better. She's back to teaching full-time, renting a small apartment near her parents. She's in therapy twice a week. She's started dating someone new, a gentle man who teaches at her school, who knows her history and treats her like spun glass. I'm not sure I'll ever fully trust again, she told me over tea last week. But I'm learning that not all men are like him. That what happened wasn't normal or okay or my fault. I'm proud of you, I told her. For surviving. For healing. For having the courage to testify. I did it for other women, she said. So they'd know they're not alone. So they'd know that he's my husband isn't a justification for abuse. She asked me if I'd visited my grandson in prison. I told her the truth. I hadn't. I'd written him one letter explaining that I needed time. That I didn't know if I could separate the boy I raised from the man he became. I haven't heard back from him. Maybe he understands. Maybe he's angry. I don't know. Some days I miss him, miss who he was, who he could have been. I look at old photos and see that smiling boy, and my heart breaks all over again. Other days I'm just angry. Angry that he threw away everything, his marriage, his future, his integrity, for validation from men who didn't care about him. Angry that he let them twist his mind until he couldn't see his wife as a person anymore, just a thing that owed him something. Angry that I didn't see it happening, didn't intervene sooner, didn't realize that goodness isn't permanent if you don't protect it. Mostly, I'm angry that he had a choice. Every single step of the way, he had a choice. He chose to listen when Derek called him a simp. He chose to believe that kindness was weakness. He chose to prioritize his desires over her humanity. He chose to crush those pills. Nobody forced him. His friends influenced him, yes, but at the end of the day, he made the decisions that led him to that kitchen with drugged orange juice in his hands. And now a good woman is traumatized, a baby is dead, and I have to live with the knowledge that I raised someone capable of this. My neighbor asked me the other day how my grandson was doing. She'd heard through the grapevine about the arrest, but didn't know the details. He's in prison, I told her simply. Her face fell. Oh my goodness. What happened? He tried to drug his wife. Sexually assault her. The words still feel like gravel in my mouth. Like I'm speaking a language I never wanted to learn. She didn't know what to say. Just stammered something about being sorry and changed the subject. I don't blame her. What do you say to that? How do you respond when someone's grandson, someone they raised from birth, loved unconditionally, turns out to be a predator? There's no guidebook for this particular flavor of grief. I went through his childhood room last month. I've been putting it off, but I'm 81 years old and I can't keep living in a museum. His report cards were still in the desk drawer. All A's and B's, teacher comments like, pleasure to have in class, and very respectful young man. His soccer trophies lined the shelf. Participation awards mostly, but he'd been so proud of them. A photo album from his high school graduation. Him in his cap and gown, grinning at the camera, arm around my shoulders. I remember that day. Remember thinking I'd done it, raised a good man all by myself. I sat on his childhood bed and cried for the first time since the arrest. Not for who he is now, but for who he was. For who he could have been. There's a particular cruelty in watching someone you love destroy themselves. In seeing all their potential, all their goodness, get corrupted into something unrecognizable. People keep asking me where I went wrong. As if there's a specific moment I can point to, a specific parenting failure that led here. Did you not teach him to respect women? I did. God, I did. We had conversations about consent, about treating partners as equals, about the difference between love and possession. Maybe he needed a father figure? Maybe. But plenty of boys grow up without fathers and don't become predators. And plenty with fathers turn out just like this. Were there signs you missed? Every day I replay moments from his childhood, searching for warning signs. Was he too aggressive as a child? Too possessive of his toys? Did he show empathy? But the truth is, he was a normal kid. A good kid, even. He cried at sad movies. He was gentle with animals. He helped elderly neighbors with their groceries. The monster wasn't always there. Or if it was dormant, waiting for the right conditions to emerge. And Derek and his friends? They were those conditions. I looked into this phenomenon after the arrest. Spend hours at the library. I'm not good with computers, reading psychology books and articles about how good people become bad. There's a term for it. Moral disengagement. It's a process where someone gradually convinces themselves that their harmful actions aren't really harmful. That their victims aren't really victims. That normal moral rules don't apply to their specific situation. It happens in stages. First, you start seeing yourself as the victim. My grandson did this, convinced himself that Leah was withholding something from him, punishing him for being a virgin who waited. Second, you find people who validate this worldview. Derek and the others did this perfectly. They gave my grandson a community of men who all agreed that wives were obligated to provide sex, that women who refused were being cruel. Third, you dehumanize the victim. My grandson stopped seeing Leah as a whole person, someone with her own trauma, grief, and needs. She became an object that wasn't functioning properly. Finally, you convince yourself that your harmful action is actually helping. That drugging your wife is just helping her relax so you can both reconnect. By the time you're at stage 4, you genuinely don't see yourself as a bad person. You think you're solving a problem. Reading about this helped me understand how it happened. But it didn't make me feel better. Because understanding isn't forgiveness. And explanation isn't excuse. The prison is 2 hours away. I could visit if I wanted to. Some days I think I should. He's still my grandson, still the baby I rocked to sleep when he had nightmares. Maybe he needs to see that someone still cares, that he's not completely abandoned. Other days I think, why should I prioritize his feelings? He didn't prioritize Leah's. He didn't prioritize his daughter's health. He prioritized his ego and his libido, and now he's dealing with consequences. Leah told me I shouldn't feel guilty either way. He made his choices, Grandma, she said gently. And you get to make yours. You don't owe him forgiveness or visits or anything else just because you raised him. You're a victim of what he did too. I'd never thought of it that way. But she's right, I am a victim. He stole my grandson from me. The real one, the good one. He replaced him with a stranger who looks the same but isn't. That's a theft too. A loss that deserves to be mourned. His appeal was denied last week. 6 years. He'll serve at least 4 with good behavior. He'll be 34 when he gets out. Still young. Still has most of his life ahead of him. Leah will be 32. She'll have spent 6 years healing from what he did to her. 6 years building a new life. 6 years learning to trust again. That math doesn't seem fair. But I suppose none of this is fair. I wonder sometimes what he thinks about in prison. Whether he's genuinely remorseful or just sorry he got caught. Whether he's doing the therapy they require or just going through the motions. I wonder if he thinks about Leah. About the baby they lost. About the man he used to be. I wonder if he understands that this isn't just about the drugging. That the drugging was just the culmination of months of abuse. That he'd already destroyed his marriage long before he crushed those pills. I wonder if he knows that Leah still has nightmares. That she flinches when men raise their voices. That she had a panic attack in the grocery store last month because she saw someone who looked like him. I wonder if he cares. There's a support group I've been attending. For family members of sexual offenders. I didn't want to go at first. Didn't want to sit in a circle with other people and admit that my grandson tried to rape his wife. Didn't want to see their judgment or pity. But it's been helpful. Everyone there understands the particular hell of loving someone who did something unforgivable. The cognitive dissonance of remembering them as good while knowing what they're capable of. There's a woman whose son molested his stepdaughter. A man whose brother was convicted of assaulting multiple women. A mother whose teenage son drugged a girl at a party. We're all grappling with the same questions. How did we miss it? Could we have stopped it? Are we bad people for still loving them? The group leader, a therapist who specializes in this, says something that stuck with me. You can love someone and still hold them accountable. You can grieve who they were while accepting who they are. These things aren't mutually exclusive. She also said, you didn't fail. They did. You gave them values and tools and love. What they chose to do with those things is on them. I want to believe her. Some days I do. Other days I think, but I raised him. His moral foundation came from me. So where did I go wrong? Leah brought her new boyfriend to meet me last month. His name is Marcus. Actually, no, that's not right. His name is something gentle. Something that suits him. Let me call him James. James teaches art at the elementary school where Leah teaches 2nd grade. He's soft-spoken, patient, the kind of man who listens more than he talks. When Leah went to the bathroom, he turned to me with serious eyes. I want you to know, he said quietly, that I understand what she's been through. And I could never do anything like that. She sets all the boundaries and I respect every single one. Good, I told him. Because if you hurt her, you'll have me to deal with. He smiled slightly. I believe that. But you won't have to worry. She's the most incredible person I've ever met. What she survived, how she's rebuilt herself, I'm in awe of her every day. The last thing I'd ever do is make her feel unsafe. When Leah came back, I saw the way he looked at her. Like she was precious. Like she was whole, not broken. My grandson used to look at her that way, once upon a time. But he forgot. or stopped caring, or decided his wants were more important than her well-being. James seems different. But then again, my grandson seemed different too, in the beginning. I pray that Leah's judgment is better this time. That James really is who he appears to be. But I also know that trust, once shattered, is nearly impossible to fully restore. I got a letter from the prison yesterday. From him. My grandson. I've been staring at the envelope for 2 days, unable to open it. Part of me wants to read it. Wants to know what he has to say, whether he's changed, whether he understands the magnitude of what he did. Part of me wants to burn it unopened. Wants to protect myself from whatever's inside, whether it's manipulation or genuine remorse. I'm not sure I can handle either one. Leah says I should do whatever feels right for me. That there's no wrong choice. But every choice feels wrong. Reading it feels like a betrayal of Leah. Not reading it feels like a betrayal of the boy I raised. I'm trapped between 2 versions of my grandson, the one who existed for 26 years, and the one who emerged in the year after his wedding. Which one is real? Which one do I owe my loyalty to? Or maybe they're both real. Maybe people contain multitudes, capable of both tremendous good and terrible evil depending on which voice they listen to. That's the thought that keeps me up at night, that the capacity for this was always in him. That Derek didn't create a monster. Just revealed one that was sleeping. If that's true, then what does it say about any of us? Are we all just one bad influence away from becoming unrecognizable? I opened the letter this morning. It was 3 pages, handwritten in his familiar scrawl. For a moment, seeing that handwriting, the same handwriting that used to appear on Mother's Day cards and thank you notes, made me ache. Then I read the words. Dear Grandma, I know you probably don't want to hear from me. I know I have no right to ask for your time or attention or forgiveness. But I need to tell you some things, even if you never respond. First, I'm sorry. I know I've said that before, but I need you to understand that I mean it differently now. In the beginning, I was sorry I got caught. Sorry my life fell apart. Sorry that everyone hated me. But I've been in therapy here, court-mandated, but I'm actually engaging with it, and I'm starting to understand what I actually did. Not the legal version, but the human version. I destroyed Leah. I took someone who loved me completely and turned her into someone who's afraid of men. I took her trust and her safety and her sense of self, and I ground them into nothing because I was too selfish and entitled to see her as a person. The therapist made me write down everything from Leah's perspective. Every time I pressured her for sex. Every time I made her feel guilty for being tired or sad. Every time I chose my ego over her well-being. Reading it back, seeing my actions through her eyes, I threw up. Literally threw up in the therapy session because I couldn't face what I'd done. I killed our daughter, Grandma. Not directly, but the doctor said stress. And who caused that stress? Me. With my constant demands and anger and resentment. I was so focused on what I wasn't getting that I didn't care what it was costing her. And then I was going to drug her. I was going to take away her ability to say no because I was tired of hearing it. Do you know what that makes me? It makes me exactly what the prosecutor called me, a predator. I've been trying to understand how I got there. How I went from the guy who cried at our wedding to the guy crushing pills into orange juice. It started small. Derek made a comment about me being whipped for doing dishes. I laughed it off, but it stuck with me. Made me feel embarrassed. Then another comment about how wives need to be trained. I pushed back at first, but they kept at it. And I was struggling, Leah, and I were fighting about sex, about money, about everything, and these guys seemed to have it figured out. They made it sound so logical. Women need strong men. You're too nice, that's why she doesn't respect you. Stop asking and start taking what's yours. Each piece of advice chipped away at what you taught me. Each time I followed their advice and Leah got more distant, they'd say I wasn't going far enough. That I needed to be even more dominant, even more demanding. It's like I was in a cult, Grandma. Except the cult was just a bunch of miserable men validating each other's worst instincts. But here's the thing, they didn't force me. I chose to listen. I chose to believe them over my own conscience. I chose to see Leah as an obstacle instead of a partner. I can't blame Derek or the others. They were influences, but the choices were mine. The guy in the cell next to me is here for the same thing, drugging his girlfriend. He still doesn't think he did anything wrong. Says she was a tease, that she owed him. I hear him talking and I recognize my own thoughts from a year ago. The entitlement. The victimhood. The refusal to see that no means no. That bodies aren't owed. That marriage is an ownership. It makes me sick. But it also shows me how close I was to never understanding at all. If you hadn't walked in when you did, I would have gone through with it. And I probably would have done it again. And eventually, I would have become my cell neighbor. Someone who never sees himself as a predator. So thank you. For stopping me. For calling the police. For refusing to make excuses for me. You saved Leah from something even worse. You probably saved me too, even though I didn't deserve saving. I'm not asking you to visit or forgive me. I'm just asking you to know that I'm trying to understand. Trying to become someone different. Someone better. Not the guy I was before. That person is gone and I killed him. But maybe someone who understands what he's capable of and guards against it every single day. I love you. I'm sorry I destroyed our family. I'm sorry I proved that all your faith in me was misplaced. Your grandson. I cried reading it. Not tears of forgiveness or reconciliation. Just tears of grief for what's been lost. Because even if he means every word, even if he truly has changed, it doesn't undo the damage. It doesn't give Leah back her innocence or her baby or the year she spent being degraded. It doesn't change the fact that I'll never look at him the same way again. Leah asked me what the letter said. I told her. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "Do you believe him?" I don't know. Maybe. Does it matter? It matters if you need it to matter, she said carefully. If you need to believe he's changing so you can have peace, then believe it. What about you? Do you need him to have changed? She thought about that. I need him to leave me alone, she finally said. I need him to be far away from me, understanding or not. Because even if he's genuinely sorry, even if he's become a better person, he's still the man who did those things to me. And I don't owe him anything. Not forgiveness. Not acknowledgement. Nothing. That's fair. Is it terrible that part of me hopes he never changes? She asked quietly. That part of me wants him to stay a monster so I don't have to feel complicated about what happened? No, I told her. That's not terrible. That's self-preservation. Because that's the thing about abuse. It's easier to heal when you can paint your abuser as purely evil. When they apologize, when they change, it complicates your narrative. Makes you wonder if you should have tried harder, stayed longer, given them another chance. But you shouldn't have. And Leah didn't have to. His growth, if it's real, is for him. Not for her. She doesn't owe him the emotional labor of witnessing his redemption. I haven't written back to him yet. I'm not sure I will. Maybe silence is my answer. Maybe he needs to sit with the fact that some bridges, once burned, can't be rebuilt. The support group says I need to make peace with ambiguity. With not knowing if he's genuinely changed. With loving who he was while rejecting who he became. They say I need to forgive myself for not seeing it sooner, for not being able to protect Leah. But forgiveness is hard. For him, for myself, for everyone involved in this nightmare. What I've learned from all of this. Good people can do terrible things. That doesn't make the things less terrible, but it complicates our understanding of good and evil. Abuse isn't always obvious. It doesn't always look like hitting or yelling. Sometimes it looks like pressure. Entitlement. A gradual erosion of someone's autonomy disguised as love. Men need to be careful about who they listen to, about which voices they allow into their heads. Because there are a lot of Dereks out there, spreading poison and calling it wisdom. Women need to know that he's my husband doesn't mean anything. Marriage isn't consent. Marriage isn't ownership. You can say no to your husband. You should be able to say no without fear. And grandmothers, parents, need to know that raising someone right doesn't guarantee they'll stay right. You can do everything correctly and still watch them choose wrong. I think about that night in the kitchen constantly. What if I'd arrived 5 minutes later? What if I hadn't used my spare key? What if I'd called first instead of just letting myself in? Leah would have drunk that juice. She would have gotten drowsy confused. And he would have. I can't finish that thought. Can't let myself imagine what I prevented. But I do know this, I saved her that night. Maybe I couldn't save her from the months of psychological abuse before it. Maybe I couldn't save their daughter. Maybe I couldn't save my grandson from himself. But I saved her from that specific violation. And maybe that has to be enough. Leah is getting married. To James. He proposed last week, and she said yes. She called to tell me, her voice nervous. I know it might seem fast, but Grandma, he's different. You don't have to explain yourself to me, I interrupted. If you're happy, if you feel safe, then I'm happy for you. You'll come to the wedding? Of course. It'll be small. Just family and close friends. Very different from... She trailed off. Very different from the wedding to my grandson. The one I'd been so proud of, so certain was the beginning of a beautiful life. That's good, I told her. You deserve a fresh start. A real one. She was quiet. Then, do you think he knows? That I'm getting married. I don't know. Does it matter? I guess not. Part of me wants him to know that I moved on. That he didn't break me permanently. You're allowed to want that. But another part of me never wants him to know anything about my life ever again. You're allowed to want that too. She laughed, but it was sad. It's exhausting, having all these contradictory feelings. That's trauma, I said gently. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't resolve neatly. You just have to hold all the contradictions at once and keep moving forward anyway. The wedding is next month. I've already bought my dress. Already arranged for a car service, because my eyes aren't what they used to be. I won't tell my grandson about it. When I visit, if I visit, I won't mention Leah at all. She deserves to move forward without his shadow following her. And maybe that's the final lesson in all of this. Sometimes love means letting go. Means stepping back. Means accepting that you can't fix everything, can't save everyone, can't force redemption or reconciliation. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is witness someone's pain and not try to diminish it. Not try to rush them toward forgiveness they're not ready for. My grandson made choices that hurt people. Now he lives with consequences. Leah survived something unthinkable. Now she's building a life worth living. And I'm somewhere in between, grieving the grandson I lost while celebrating the young woman who refused to stay a victim. People ask me sometimes what I want others to learn from our story. I tell them, pay attention. To the men your sons befriend. To the changes in people you love. To the small erosions of kindness that happen so gradually you don't notice until it's too late. I tell them, believe women. When they say they're uncomfortable, when they say something's wrong, when they say they need help, believe them. Don't wait for proof or evidence or a crisis. I tell them, confront abuse even when it's uncomfortable. Even when it's your grandson or your son or your brother. Especially then. I tell them, sexual assault isn't always a stranger in an alley. It's often someone familiar. Someone trusted. And it doesn't always look violent. Sometimes it looks like pills in orange juice. Like pressure that never lets up. Like entitlement disguised as love. And I tell them, you can't save people from themselves. You can give them values and tools and love, but ultimately, they choose their own path. Their failures aren't yours, even when they feel like it. I still have his letter. I've read it probably 50 times now, searching for sincerity, for manipulation, for any hint of who he really is now. I think he means it. I think he genuinely understands, at least intellectually, what he did. But understanding isn't the same as change. And even if he changes, it doesn't erase what he did. Some actions have permanent consequences. Some betrayals can't be forgiven. Some relationships can't be salvaged. That's not cruelty. That's just reality. On my darkest days, I wonder if I should have seen it coming. If there were signs in his childhood that I missed or minimized. Was he too possessive of his toys? Too aggressive during sports? Too quick to anger when things didn't go his way? I replay memories like old movies, searching for foreshadowing that probably isn't there. Because the truth is simpler and scarier, normal people can become predators under the right circumstances. Good kids can grow into dangerous men if they're exposed to the wrong influences and make the wrong choices. There is no foolproof way to prevent this. No parenting technique that guarantees your child won't hurt someone. All you can do is teach them right from wrong, model healthy relationships, and hope they carry those lessons forward. And when they don't, when they fail spectacularly and hurt someone you also love, you have to live in the tension between who they were and who they became. Last week, I drove past their old apartment. Someone else lives there now. The curtains are different. There's a bike on the balcony that wasn't there before. It looks normal. Like nothing terrible ever happened there. But I know different. I know that in that kitchen, a young man crushed pills into orange juice while his traumatized wife slept. I know that if I hadn't arrived when I did, something unforgivable would have happened. The apartment doesn't remember. But I do. And Leah does. And somewhere in a prison cell 2 hours away, my grandson does too. I'm writing this down because someone needs to tell this story. Someone needs to say out loud that abuse happens in normal families. That good people can become abusers. That marriage doesn't mean ownership. Someone needs to warn young men about friends like Derek. About the seductive logic of entitlement. About how easy it is to slide from frustration to resentment to violation. Someone needs to tell women that they're allowed to say no. To their husbands, their boyfriends, anyone. That their bodies belong to them, regardless of marital status or past intimacy. Someone needs to remind parents that raising good kids isn't enough. You have to stay vigilant. Watch for changes. Be willing to confront uncomfortable truths. And someone needs to say, if you see something, do something. Don't wait. Don't give them chances to explain or fix it themselves. Call the police. Get help. Save whoever needs saving. I wish I'd done more sooner. Wish I'd confronted my grandson the first time Leah showed up in tears. Wish I'd been more aggressive about protecting her. But I did stop him that night. And maybe that has to be enough. The wedding is in 2 weeks. I'm going to watch Leah marry a man who treats her with respect. Who sees her as a complete person, not a collection of services she provides. I'm going to celebrate her resilience. Her strength. Her refusal to let what happened define the rest of her life. And I'm going to grieve quietly for the grandson who could have been there, who should have been the groom, who threw it all away for the approval of men who didn't matter. Life is full of these contradictions. Joy and grief existing simultaneously. Love and loss intertwined so tightly you can't separate them. My grandson made his choices. Leah survived them. I witnessed it all. And now we all have to live with what remains. That's the real story. Not just the dramatic night with the pills and the police, but the aftermath. The years of healing and accountability and learning to exist in a world where someone you loved did something unforgivable. There's no neat resolution. No moment where everything makes sense. Just people trying their best to move forward while carrying the weight of what happened. That's all any of us can do. Tomorrow, I'll probably think about visiting him. About responding to his letter. About whether I owe him anything or whether I owe myself peace instead. But today, I'm going to call Leah. And ask about wedding details. About flowers and music and whether she needs help with anything. Today, I'm going to choose the living over the lost. Today, I'm going to remember that I did the right thing that night in the kitchen, even though it destroyed my family. Because some things are more important than family. Like safety. Like justice. Like refusing to let abuse hide behind closed doors and blood relations. My grandson taught me that. Not intentionally. Not proudly. But he taught me nonetheless. And maybe that's something. Maybe that's enough. The end. If you or someone you know is experiencing domestic abuse or sexual coercion in a relationship, please reach out for help. You are not alone. Resources like the National Domestic Violence Hotline 1-800-799-7233 and RAIN 1-800-656-4673 provide confidential support 24/7. Marriage never means obligation. Your body is always your own.